So Grease is obviously a classic show. Were you scared about taking on such an iconic role?
I think it's always really scary to take on an iconic show like Grease. Anything original is always a bit nerve-wracking. You know, you want to perform the best you can and represent the character that everyone knows and loves. So yeah, it was a bit scary. Luckily we had creative freedom from Alistair Smith, the director, and he was able to give us absolute freedom with creating our own version of the character. So a bit scary, but exciting.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience to try and build a show. With a lot of iconic shows, there is set choreography and set blocking and a way that you need to do things, but we sort of had to build this show from the ground up. We had nothing to go off of, and it was exciting territory to be in the room creating this new 2021 version of a show that is so beloved.
Cool. And what part of the show are you most looking forward to?
The part of the show I'm most looking forward to, I think, is Grease Lightning. It's a pretty epic number. We've got so many people on stage. We've got the entire ensemble, but we've got Corey being thrown all over the stage, people running on, running off. We've got cars changing, all of this. Everything's happening in that number. And it's also just a really fun rock out, you know, and you're jamming with all your friends, so it's heaps of fun.
And what about you guys?
Favourite part of the show, I would have to say, is the start of Act 2. We start with Shakin' at the High School Hop, and the energy that comes from the band, just abruptly starting the music, and the lights go, and there's people running on stage, like the energy is just electric. It's amazing.
I love the opening. I won't spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but there's this beautiful, lovely ballad that Sandy and Danny sing, and then the pin drops, and everything goes ballistic, and chills every time.
Fantastic. And so what's different about your interpretation of your role in the show?
So what's different about the interpretation for myself, it's a tricky one because you want to stay true to a lot of the traditional stuff because it's a classic character that everyone knows and loves. But I think what's different about this one for me is Danny's a supporting character. What we've focused on is Sandy's journey and how she has found that empowerment for herself and less from the people around her. So it was really fun looking at Danny through that lens of a supporting character and seeing how his journey influences Sandy's but doesn't actually dictate what happens for her.
Yeah, for this certain production, I think we've decided we want to give Sandy a backbone. I think she's so often seen as the ingenue, very soft-spoken. Annalise and I wanted to make her more than that. So standing her ground, giving some sass back to Danny, standing on her own 2 feet.
There's so much different about Miss Lynch because people think of her as a throwaway character, as like a punchline to a couple of the jokes in the show, but there's so much more to her than that. There's so much presence. She's kind of like a tornado every time she comes across the stage, and she leaves like a path of destruction for the students. And it's also, there's so much about Grease that is about that rebellion against those authority figures. So when she comes through, it's impetus for all of these other characters to start acting up and rebelling and pushing back.
Okay, one more group question. The show is set to be tackling issues like gender inequality, toxic masculinity and homophobia head on, which is really interesting because I think at its core so many of these things were present in the original production. How does a show like Grease manage to do this?
There's lots of moments in the script that read as really misogynistic, really homophobic, really setting people inside of their own roles. But in our production, the way we've looked at the Tbirds and the Pink Ladies is as the antithesis to this. Like, the Pink Ladies are the strongest women in their school. They're so sure of themselves and so connected, and there's so much girl power in there. And the same with the Tbirds. They are not afraid to talk to each other about their feelings, you know. Like, they are not great people all of the time, as all teenagers are. So we've sort of taken both these groups and had them kind of explore those lines that are a little bit more problematic and have sort of different interpretations, different reactions to those lines. There's a lot of nuance and things going on inside the minds of the characters that is really ticking away. So even while the script remains as it is, and homophobic jokes, sexist jokes, there's growth happening in the characters, in the actors across the stage.
Anything you guys like to say on that?
Yeah, I think it's particularly interesting, the line conversation of how some of the lines have those issues rooted in them. I think it's particularly interesting with Carla Beard's character. They play Sunny, who is originally a male presenting human who plays the role. She's a gender fluid female presenting performer, so having someone with a female presenting body who is a queer performer saying those jarring lines to audiences, it's really powerful.
Anything you add to that?
I don't think I could add anything more
That's
from all
cool,
these
that's
guys.
fantastic. Okay, so Lucinda and Sean. So you're obviously playing one of the most iconic duos in film history, which is big shoes to fill. What does the relationship look like for Danny and Sandy in this production? Will there be much of a shake-up, or will we see a more classic Danny and Sandy? We kind of already answered it, if you can.
So it is a very iconic duo. They're very big shoes to fill, and it's very scary. But I think, yeah, the support we've had from the creative team has really helped us through that. It's so iconic, and people have their image of, you know, John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John. And as much as you want to supply the audience with that, you also want to make it your own, because you're not just a clone copy, you're your own performer. And we do our best, I think.
100%, totally agree. And touching on that, because we've had that time, it's quite a long rehearsal period, so we've had that time to work with each other and really discover our characters' journeys together, which is, I think, helped us find things that are different to other productions. And as I was saying before about looking at Sandy's journey in a different way, it makes you look at Danny's journey in a different way, and then it also makes you look at their relationship in a different way. And you find different things that you just on the surface level you don't necessarily think to look that much further in, but like there's a lot of trouble in Danny that Sandy can help fix if he lets her, and there's different things in this that you don't often always see straight on surface level.
Yeah, I think for Sandy, it's rather than, I think a lot of people know the story of her changing to get the guy, and I think in this certain production we're not focusing on that as much. It's more the fact that she's empowering herself and finding her friendships with all the pink ladies. And a lot of those cues come from non-verbal, because you can't alter the script, obviously, you have to do what is written. So I think a lot of that communicates through the non-verbal communication on stage, the acting through the pink ladies, as well as Danny and the Tbirds. Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
Yeah, right, that's perfect. You are part of this change we're seeing in the show. We have a gender fluid performer taking on the role of one of the Tbirds, and you as a non-binary performer will be taking on the role of Miss Lynch. What were some of the challenges in constructing that character?
I think there's lots of challenges for queer people creating characters that aren't sort of based around themselves. So myself playing Miss Lynch, Carla Beard, who plays Sunny, and Liz Ball, who plays Johnny Casino, have all approached these characters in quite a different way in terms of how the character services the show. So as Miss Lynch, I had to really find not a place of femininity or masculinity, but a place of power and authority, and really make sure that whether you believe that she's a real woman or not, she is an entity that is to be feared and respected and adored in many ways. Carla playing Sunny, they had to find this bubbly, horny kid who's just like really eager to get going and do life and find sort of those down and dirty mannerisms. And then Liz, who had to play Johnny Casino, this like Elvis level rock star where gender is just not even considered. It's just the magnetism of the celebrity of it all. And Liz has done a fantastic job of building this persona that disregards gender. And I think Carla and I do that as well. It's not about who we are. It's about how those characters lift the story.
And we've seen this done most famously in Hairspray, but will you be taking the role more towards parody or realism?
Hairspray is such an iconic show. Edna Turnblad is a dream role of mine. Because the butt of the joke isn't that she is a man dressed as a woman. She is the suburban mother just taken to this extreme level. And it's not mentioned that she's, played by a drag queen, played by a male presenting performer. the comedy comes from the lived experience that she has and the way that she experiences the world and the agoraphobia and the things like wrapped up in her. And it's the same for Miss Lynch. She is this fully formed, fully realized human. I have pages of backstory about her. She lives in this world of satire and comedy, and she's quippy and she's witty and she keeps up with these students. So she toes the line between parody and realism, because the show itself toes the line between parody and realism. We've got, you know, characters that we spent weeks developing and a script that is as camp as Christmas. It's interesting how we play and push and pull with the audience's expectations and beliefs, you know, and how close we get to sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge that we're in a show. So yeah, Miss Lynch is sort of at the head of that. She lives in this satire world, but she always believes what she's saying, and that's the important thing, is that I, as the actor, believe, she believes, and the audience believes. If it's funny and parody, it's funny and parody, but it's true to her.